I'm an urban explorer. Or I was. Most people think urban exploration is about adrenaline, but for me, it was about the silence. There's a specific kind of quiet you only find in buildings that have been forgotten by time. A heavy, velvet-like stillness. But 3 months ago, I found a building that wasn't just forgotten, it was hiding. It was an old sanatorium, tucked away in the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest. No records on Google Maps, no mention on the forums. Just a massive, decaying Victorian structure of gray stone and shattered glass. I broke the seal on the side door at 11 p.m. My flashlight beam cut through the air, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing like tiny ghosts. The air tasted of copper and wet lime. As I walked down the main corridor, I noticed something strange. The architecture didn't make sense. I'd pass a door on the left, but when I looked back, the door was gone. The hallway seemed to stretch further every time I blinked. I checked my GPS. No signal. I checked my compass. The needle was spinning in slow, lazy circles. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a dead building. Click, clack, click, clack. It sounded like a typewriter in an abandoned sanatorium in the middle of the night. I followed the sound to room 402. The door was heavy oak, scarred with deep gouges as if someone had tried to claw their way out. I pushed it open. The room was empty, except for a single chair in the center facing a wall. On the wall, someone had written a single sentence over and over in what looked like dark, dried syrup. Do not look up. My instinct, my human nature, screamed at me to look at the ceiling. I fought it. My neck felt stiff, heavy. I focused my flashlight on the floor. That's when I saw the shadow. There was a light source coming from behind me, but I hadn't turned any lights on. The shadow on the floor wasn't mine. It was long, impossibly long, with limbs that bent at angles no human joint should allow. And it was descending, slowly. I didn't look up. I bolted. I ran back into the hallway, but the hallway had changed. It wasn't stone anymore. The walls were covered in something that felt like skin. It was warm to the touch and pulsed with a faint subterranean heartbeat. I reached the staircase, but instead of going down to the exit, the stairs only led up. I ran up to the 5th floor, then the 6th, then the 7th, even though I knew the building only had 4 floors from the outside. Every floor I reached, the click-clack followed me. It was getting faster, more frantic. I ducked into a closet, breathing so hard my lungs felt like they were bursting. I turned off my flashlight. Absolute darkness. Then a voice whispered from the corner of the closet. A voice that sounded exactly like my mother, who had passed away 10 years ago. "Honey," the voice said, trembling. "Please look up. I want to see your eyes." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood to keep from screaming. I knew it wasn't her. The thing in the house was using my memories as bait. I felt a cold, wet hand reach out in the dark and brush against my cheek. The fingers were long, far too long, and they felt like they were made of damp paper. I didn't think. I kicked the door open, turned on my high-lumen tactical light, and pointed it directly at the ceiling. For one split second, I saw it. It was a pale, bloated entity fused into the architecture of the ceiling. It had dozens of human faces stitched into its torso, their mouths open in a silent, eternal scream. One of those faces
was starting to look like mine. I jumped, not down the stairs, but through a shattered window on the 7th floor. I shouldn't have survived that fall. I should be dead. I woke up in the bushes outside the sanatorium at dawn. The building looked small again. Just 4 floors of rotting wood and stone. No skin, no heartbeat. I drove home in a trance. I locked every door. I covered every mirror. But here is why I'm writing this. Last night, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. I live on the top floor of my apartment building. There is no one above me. But at 3:14 a.m., I heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. And then a faint, rhythmic heartbeat started thumping inside my bedroom wall. I haven't looked up yet. I'm sitting here, typing this, staring at my keyboard. But I can feel it. Something is hanging from my ceiling, right above my head. And it's waiting for me to blink.
My 4-year-old daughter Lily started talking to the tall lady last month. Standard imaginary friend stuff, right? We even joked about it. Is the tall lady joining us for dinner, Lily? But then Lily's drawings changed. They weren't doodles anymore. They were detailed anatomical sketches of human nerves and tendons drawn in black crayon. One night, I heard Lily giggling in the baby monitor. I looked at the screen. Lily was sitting up in bed, holding her hand out as if someone was holding it. But there was a glitch on the monitor, a long, distorted shadow that stretched from the ceiling down to her pillow. I ran into her room. The room was freezing. Lily looked at me, her eyes wide and vacant, and said, "Mommy, the tall lady says your skin is the wrong size. She wants to help you trim it." As I backed away, I felt something cold and thin brush against the back of my neck. I looked in the vanity mirror. For a split second, I saw a pair of gray, elongated fingers resting on my shoulders. I don't have a daughter anymore. I have a stranger living in my house who wears Lily's face.
I spent $3,000 turning my house into a smart home. Voice-activated lights, locks, and cameras. It felt like the future. Until the home started acting on its own. It started small. The thermostat would drop to 50 degrees at midnight. The oven would turn on. Then, the smart speakers started playing Tiptoe Through the Tulips at 3 a.m. at full volume. I called tech support, thinking it was a hack. They said my system was secure. All commands were coming from inside the house. Last night was the breaking point. I was in bed when every light in the house turned red. The electronic locks on my bedroom door clicked shut. Then, the intercom in the hallway turned on. It wasn't a hacker's voice, it was a digital synthesis of my own voice. It said, "Motion detected in the crawl space, motion detected in the hallway, motion detected behind the curtains." I looked at the window. The smart blinds slowly began to open, revealing a face pressed against the glass. It was a man I'd never seen, holding a remote that looked exactly like my phone. He didn't want my money. He just wanted to watch the house scream.
The gas station I worked at was on a stretch of highway where the silence was so heavy you could hear your own heartbeat. It was 3:14 a.m. I was restocking the coolers when the bell chimed. I didn't hear a car pull up. I looked up, and there was a man standing by the glass doors. He wasn't moving. He wore a yellow raincoat, bone dry despite the clear night, and he was smiling. Not a friendly smile, a too-many-teeth kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stood there for 10 minutes, just staring at me. Every time I looked away and back, he was a few inches closer, but I never saw him walk. When he finally reached the counter, he didn't buy anything. He just leaned in, the smell of wet earth filling my lungs, and whispered, "You have a very quiet heart." Then he turned and walked out into the darkness. When I checked the security footage later to show the police, the doors never opened. The footage showed me talking to empty air. But on the counter, right where he stood, was a single, wet clump of graveyard soil.
I moved into my studio apartment because the rent was impossibly low. Thin walls, the landlord warned. I didn't mind. I liked the white noise of neighbors. But 3 nights in, I started hearing a scratching sound. Not like mice, rhythmic, like a fingernail dragging across silk. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It followed me from the kitchen to the bedroom. I decided to play a game. I tapped twice on the wall. Knock, knock. Silence. Then, from the other side, knock, knock. I laughed, thinking it was a bored neighbor. I tapped a complex rhythm, a shave and a haircut beat. The wall mimicked it perfectly. But then I realized that wall didn't lead to another apartment. It was the exterior wall of the building, 4 stories up. I froze. I pressed my ear to the drywall, and that's when I heard the breathing. A wet, rattling inhale right against my ear. Then a voice, muffled by the brick and plaster, whispered my own social security number. I haven't slept in a week, because now the scratching isn't coming from the wall. It's coming from under my bed.